For the first time in centuries, researchers have uncovered what's believed to be Jesus' tomb inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
The
excavation in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has allowed us to rediscover the long history of Jerusalem.
For centuries, the ground beneath Jesus' tomb was believed to be sealed forever, protected by stone, guarded by faith, and left untouched by history. But in Jerusalem, something shifted. During what was meant to be a routine repair, the floor began to sink. Scanners revealed hidden voids, and layers no record ever mentioned were suddenly exposed. What scientists uncovered beneath the Church of Holy Sepulchre was not symbolic, not theoretical, and not expected. It was ancient, intact, and deeply unsettling. As we step closer, pause for a moment and write, Lord, reveal your truth and guide us. Then like, subscribe, and come with us, because what lies beneath this sacred ground is demanding to be uncovered now.
No alarms were supposed to sound. No discoveries were expected. What began inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was not an excavation, not a search, not an investigation into history. It was a repair, quiet, technical, almost invisible to the outside world. Then the floor began to move. Engineers working near the edicule, the small shrine believed to enclose Jesus' tomb, noticed something unsettling. The marble slabs were sinking, not evenly, not slowly, but in irregular patterns that defied normal structural wear. Hairline shifts turned into measurable drops. Instruments confirmed it. The ground beneath one of the most sacred sites on earth was no longer stable. At first, the assumption was simple. Centuries of rebuilding. Weight. Old mortar. Nothing more. But when scanners were brought in to confirm the extent of the damage, the readings refused to cooperate. Ground-penetrating radar traced the stone beneath the floor, and instead of solid bedrock, it revealed dips, slopes, and hollow spaces where none should exist. Voids. That single word changed everything. Inside the church, tension rose immediately. Any action beneath this site required unanimous approval from 3 custodial authorities who almost never agree. Yet the data left no room for delay. If the floor continued to collapse, irreversible damage could occur. Reluctantly, permission was granted, but under conditions so strict that every movement would be watched. When the first section of marble was lifted, no one spoke. What lay beneath was not modern repair material, not filler, not rubble from recent centuries. It was dense, compacted soil, ancient, layered, untouched. The kind of ground that should not exist beneath a monument repeatedly destroyed, rebuilt, and fought over for nearly 2,000 years. In that moment, the project stopped being maintenance. It became something else entirely. Because this was not chaos beneath the church. It was order, layer upon layer, preserved as if time itself had been forced to pause. History had not erased this ground. It had sealed it. And if the upper layers were this intact, one question pressed heavily on everyone present. What else was still waiting below? The answer would not come all at once. It would come slowly, deliberately, one layer at a time. And with each step downward, the discoveries would only become more impossible to ignore. Once the marble floor was removed, expectations were low. Centuries of conflict, fires, earthquakes, and reconstruction had torn Jerusalem apart again and again. Most archaeologists assumed the ground beneath the church would be a chaotic mixture, layers crushed together, disturbed beyond recognition. That is not what they found. Instead, the soil revealed a sequence so precise it felt deliberate. A vertical timeline, sealed in place, waiting to be read. At the top, sat a thin layer of modern mortar from 20th century repairs expected. Unremarkable. Beneath it, carefully laid stone matched the construction methods of the Byzantine era, dating back to the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine ordered the first church built around the tomb. Then came the Roman layer. Broken stone and compacted debris told a darker story, one tied to the 2nd century, when Emperor Hadrian reshaped Jerusalem after crushing Jewish revolts. This layer bore the unmistakable signs of deliberate burial, earlier structures flattened, covered, erased. So far, history aligned with records. But below that, the narrative shifted. The debris ended, the soil changed. What appeared next was fine limestone dust, stone chips, and packed sediment, consistent with active quarrying, not Roman fill, not later construction. Embedded within it were fragments of pottery, dated to before 70 CE, before Jerusalem fell, before the temple was destroyed. This was 1st century ground. More striking still, none of the layers had blended into one another. There was no mixing, no disturbance. Each era rested cleanly on top of the next, as if time had been carefully stacked and sealed. For nearly 2,000 years, the ground beneath the church had not been turned over. That realization stunned the team, because it meant this place was not repeatedly rebuilt from the bottom up. It was buried, then protected by every structure raised above it. The church did not erase the past beneath it. It preserved it, and that raised a troubling implication. If 1st century Jerusalem was still intact at this depth, then the next layer down would not be abstract history. It would be lived space, human space. The excavation slowed. Every grain of soil was now evidence. Every centimeter mattered. What they were approaching was no longer a construction phase or a political rewrite. It was the threshold of the time described in the Gospels. And just beneath this quarry layer, the ground would change again into something no one expected to find here at all. Stay with us. What emerges next does not belong underground. Yet it has been waiting there since the beginning. The change was immediate and unmistakable. As the Roman debris layer ended, the soil beneath it told a completely different story. The rough quarry sediment gave way to dark, enriched earth, soft, fertile, and carefully compacted. It was the kind of soil used to grow life, not extract stone. For a moment, the team hesitated. This material did not belong here. Beneath a shrine of marble and stone, in a place long believed to sit above a barren limestone quarry, this soil should not exist at all. Laboratory analysis confirmed what the eye already suspected. This was not wind-blown dirt or accidental accumulation. The composition showed intentional placement, consistent layering, and signs of long-term maintenance. Someone had brought this soil here. Someone had tended it. Then came the pollen results. Microscopic grains preserved in the earth revealed traces of olive and grape plants, both domesticated species common in 1st century Jerusalem. These were not wild growths. They were cultivated crops, grown deliberately in managed spaces. The finding was quiet, almost subtle, yet its implications were profound. A garden had once existed here. As the soil was carefully removed, the bedrock beneath came into view. Shallow grooves and cut lines ran across the stone in organized patterns. They were not cracks, not erosion. They were planting beds, carved directly into the rock. The spacing, orientation, and uniform depth matched known garden plots from the period. This was no decorative patch of greenery. For archaeologists, the discovery forced an immediate reassessment. Jewish burial customs placed tombs outside city walls, often within gardens. These spaces were private, quiet, and personal places where families visited, mourned, and remembered. The soil, the plants, and the carved beds aligned perfectly with those practices. Yet, the location made the finding deeply unsettling. This garden sat directly above a burial zone. Not near it. Not adjacent to it. Above it. The realization reframed everything uncovered so far. The quarry had come first. Then, the tombs. Then, a garden was placed above them carefully, intentionally before later empires buried it all under stone and marble. This was not accidental geography. It was deliberate design. And if a garden truly existed here in the 1st century, then the structure beneath it was no longer theoretical. It was functional, personal, used. The excavation was now approaching the space where the living once stood in the presence of the dead. And what lay beneath this garden would soon confirm it. When the final traces of garden soil were removed, stone began to emerge, not rough quarry scars, but deliberate cuts, flat surfaces, clean edges, geometry where none should exist by chance. The excavation had reached bedrock, and the bedrock had been shaped with purpose. The first structure to appear was a limestone bench. Its surface was smooth, leveled, and cut at a height archaeologists immediately recognized. This was not a step, not a foundation block, and not part of later construction. It matched the dimensions and form of 1st century Jewish burial benches used to lay a body immediately after death, for washing, preparation, and anointing. Then a second bench came into view, and then a third. All three were carved with the same rhythm of chisel marks, the same angles, the same measured spacing. This was not improvisation. It was a planned burial chamber. Toolmark analysis confirmed the methods were consistent with stone-cutting techniques used in Jerusalem between the late 1st century BCE and the year 70 CE. There were no crosses, no inscriptions, no symbols of later devotion. That absence mattered. Most tombs associated with pilgrimage were altered over time, expanded, decorated, repurposed. This one was different. The surfaces were untouched. No plaster, no reworking, no evidence of medieval intrusion. The chamber had been sealed before it could become a monument. As excavation widened, another feature emerged, a narrow burial niche carved deep into the wall, a coque. These vertical shafts were used to place a wrapped body after preparation on the bench. The presence of both benches and a coque removed any remaining doubt. This was not symbolic architecture. It was a fully operational tomb. One detail stood out. On the far wall, a niche had been started but never completed. The chisel work stopped abruptly, mid-cut. Archaeologists debated its meaning. A rushed burial, an interruption, events moving faster than planned. The stone offered no explanation, only silence. What was clear, however, was this. The chamber had been used briefly, then sealed. It was not built to be remembered. It was built to function. And if a real body had once been prepared here, then the next layer of evidence would not be stone at all. It would be human trace. Pause here, tap like, share your thoughts below, subscribe, and keep watching. What comes next is where everything changes. Stone can endure for millennia. Soil can preserve its secrets. But organic material does not survive easily. For that reason alone, what came next was never expected. With the burial chamber fully exposed, attention turned to the smallest spaces, the narrow grooves between benches, the shallow cuts where dust had settled undisturbed. Using micro-extraction tools, technicians gently collected residue that had accumulated against the stone surfaces over centuries. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than fine debris. Under magnification, that assumption collapsed. Embedded within the dust were microscopic fibers. They were faint, nearly invisible to the naked eye. yet they resisted disintegration in a way mineral particles do not. Laboratory imaging revealed a distinct woven pattern, tight, consistent, intentional. This was not plant matter. It was not environmental contamination. It was linen. The fibers showed a plain weave structure, characteristic of burial cloths used in first-century Jewish contexts. Their size, twist, and uniformity ruled out accidental intrusion. More samples were taken from different areas of the chamber. In each case, the results were the same. Something wrapped in linen had once rested on these benches. The implications were immediate and unsettling. Burial benches alone could be dismissed as unused architecture. Linen could not. Fabric degrades rapidly unless sealed. Its presence suggested not only preparation, but actual use. One sample carried an additional trace. Chemical analysis identified residues consistent with ancient burial ointments, aromatic substances applied during funerary rites. These were not modern contaminants. Their degradation patterns matched oils known from historical sources used during the Second Temple period. The tomb was no longer an abstract structure frozen in stone. It had held a body. This evidence forced a shift in how the entire site was understood. The chamber was not symbolic. It was not theoretical. It was not built to represent a story. It had served a real, human purpose, however briefly. And if linen fibers could survive here, protected by time and stone, then the possibility remained that even more remained hidden, sealed beyond reach, waiting in spaces no one had yet entered. The next discovery would confirm that this tomb was not alone beneath the church. By the time the linen fibers were confirmed, the excavation had already crossed an invisible line. What had begun as structural investigation was now a search for answers no one had intended to ask. Yet the ground beneath the church was not finished revealing its story. Ground-penetrating radar was deployed again, this time focused directly beneath the limestone slab, venerated for centuries as the place of Jesus' burial. Expectations were cautious. Most assumed the scans would confirm solid bedrock or remnants of earlier reinforcement. Instead, the monitor displayed something impossible to ignore. A clean, rectangular void appeared beneath the slab, its edges sharp, its proportions deliberate. This was not a natural cavity. It was shaped, sealed, and precisely positioned. Repeated scans confirmed the same result. There was a chamber below, and no historical map, record, or tradition mentioned it. The discovery forced an immediate pause. Removing the slab was not an option. The risk, structural, religious, and political, was too great. Instead, the team searched for an alternative. A narrow natural fissure along the bedding stone offered a single opening, just wide enough to pass a micro-camera. When the camera feed came into focus, silence filled the room. The chamber was intact. A fine layer of undisturbed dust coated the floor. The walls showed no signs of cutting after completion. No cracks, no evidence of intrusion. Time had not passed here. It had been sealed out. Along the far wall stood a limestone bench, carved in the same restrained style as those above. No ornamentation, no symbols, just function. Careful extraction of particulate samples followed. Through vacuum tubing, traces were collected from the bench surface and nearby recesses. Laboratory analysis confirmed what many had already feared to consider. Microscopic linen fibers, matching those found in the upper burial chamber, were present here as well. The concentration was higher. This suggested a body wrapped in cloth had rested here, even if only briefly. A small niche carved into the wall bore a faint discoloration, as though an object, perhaps a vessel, had once been placed there and later removed. Geochemical analysis added a final layer of certainty. Mineral crusts on the walls showed formation patterns consistent with a closed environment sealed since antiquity. There were no signs of reopening. No disturbance. No later alteration. Whatever had been placed in this chamber had been removed long ago, and the space sealed immediately after. The implications divided the team. Some argued the chamber could belong to an elite first-century burial, unconnected to any specific individual. Others noted the alignment with early descriptions too precise to ignore. A sealed chamber. Linen traces, a brief use, no later modification. Above it, centuries of worship continued unaware of what lay directly below. The excavation had uncovered not just a tomb, but a hidden layer of history preserved beneath belief itself. The discovery beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre did not end with data. It ended with division. As reports quietly circulated, reactions came fast and sharply. Archaeologists urged restraint, reminding the world that physical evidence must be tested, retested, and interpreted with caution. A first-century tomb, they argued, does not automatically belong to one man, no matter how closely it aligns with ancient texts. Religious authorities responded differently. Access was restricted. Further exploration was frozen, not out of fear of falsehood, but fear of misinterpretation. Once evidence enters the public sphere, it can no longer be controlled. And here, the stakes were unlike anything archaeology normally faces. Because the findings did not stand alone. A tomb carved before 70 CE. A garden placed deliberately above it. Burial benches and a cock used briefly, then sealed. Linen fibers with traces of burial ointments. A hidden chamber beneath the most venerated slab, untouched, unmarked, and closed since antiquity. Individually, each element could be debated. Together, they formed a pattern that refused to be ignored. Early Christian historians were quick to notice the alignment. The location outside the ancient city walls. The presence of a garden near the place of burial. The absence of later iconography. The suggestion of a tomb used once, then abandoned. Details long treated as symbolic suddenly appeared embedded in stone and soil, yet no definitive claim was made, and perhaps none ever will be. What this discovery truly unsettled was not doctrine, but certainty. It challenged the assumption that everything beneath this sacred site had already been uncovered, understood, and resolved. Instead, it revealed that history had been layered, buried, and preserved in silence, waiting for the moment when the ground itself would give way. For nearly 2,000 years, millions have stood above this place, praying, believing, remembering, never knowing what rested beneath their feet. Now, the earth has spoken, and it has not provided answers so much as it has reopened questions once thought closed forever. What lies beneath Jesus' tomb may never be fully claimed by science or faith alone, but its presence forces both to confront the same reality. The past is closer than we think, and some truths remain powerful precisely because they are incomplete. If this discovery left you thinking, tap like, share your thoughts or reflections in the comments, subscribe for more investigations like this, and thank you for watching. Because beneath stone, beneath tradition, beneath time, history is still waiting to be heard.